episode, we are jam-packed full of mixed martial arts and combat sports content, as we are going to discuss Bellator 196, Bellator 197, a little Bellator Kickboxing 9, as well as UFC 223 and UFC Glendale coming up this weekend for a jam-packed week, as I said, here mid-April. Once again, I am your host, Jim Graham, and thank you for joining me here on Beyond the Cage on MMA World and MMA UK. My co-host, Kayla Beatty, will be joining me shortly to discuss all of this action and more, and of course your comments, so please comment down below with any questions, comments, or concerns about what we're talking about, of course, or the world of mixed martial arts, as I welcome in Kayla. Once again, Jim Graham here on MMA World and MMA UK, welcoming my co-host Kayla Beatty here in just a moment to join me live, as again we're going to discuss Bellator 196, 197, UFC 223, UFC Glendale, little Bellator Kickboxing as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, it's just my name, JimGramm, or you can follow me on Instagram at the Jim Graham as well. And again, as always, please like MMA World right here on Facebook at facebook.com/MMA World with 2 extra letter D's at the end. And then, of course, also follow MMA UK on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Mixed Martial Arts UK, as we're trying to get Kayla on the broadcast here. And send another invite to her, trying to get her on the broadcast to talk with me here this afternoon. Again, welcome and thanks everybody for coming on board once again this afternoon. And hi Miles, thanks for checking in here this afternoon, so appreciate that. One second here, let me make sure I can get her on. Okay, looks like we're having some problems here with Kayla. All right, try commenting again on the video here, Kayla, because now it's not showing you up on the video. So we'll get her on in just a second here as we're sorting everything out. But comment down below again, what was your favorite event this weekend? What did you enjoy watching? Of course, there was a lot of local mixed martial arts, and looks like Kayla may have to, I don't know if we got to do a current update, or because I just updated everything today, so should be able to get her on momentarily. But until then, I'm going to start here with UFC 223, and I'll start real quickly with the undercard, or well, whatever was left of an undercard with all the different changes and whatnot. So let's see, now she's showing up again. All right, so I'm gonna try to send another invite to Kayla and see what's going on, see if we can get her on the broadcast here. Again, only 4 fights were shown on the undercard for UFC 223. Those were all shown on Fox Sports 1, starting in the light heavyweight division with Devin Clark, as he took on, I believe, UFC newcomer Mike Rodriguez. And looking over at this fight, definitely was a close fight. You know, I kind of said Devin Clark is a guy that might be a little small for the light heavyweight weight class, but obviously a very strong wrestler. Definitely is a guy that, you know, has a lot of muscle on his frame, just isn't you know, maybe as tall and as wide as some of these other light heavyweights, and obviously his opponent here in Mike Rodriguez. And very interesting fight. Definitely kind of say like a damage versus control sort of deal. You know, looking at the overall strikes, I mean, Devin Clark landed 167 strikes of 200 thrown, had 7 successful takedowns out of 11 attempts. You know, Rodriguez also, you know, very accurate in his strikes, but only 66 of 95. so threw 100 less strikes. And really the only round I was kind of thought you could give to Mike Rigas might have been the second round. That looked to me like maybe he had the most damage done in that round, and that was also the only round that Devin did not land a takedown. So that would probably be the only round I would do there. And then round 3, Devin kind of swept it to me, taking him down 4 times. So looks as though Kayla's having some technical problems. So we're going to try to sort those out as we go along with the broadcast. But I'll be live with you here discussing there. But regardless, for Rodriguez, that's the type of thing that's kind of going to happen here. Is he's going to take on guys that want to take him down. I mean, he's a big, strong guy. He came into this fight having finished all of his 9 professional bouts, and obviously 6'4" with a 98-inch reach. So this is a very big guy, very solid for this weight class. And even though he got taken down 7 times, I think overall, he did pretty good considering, taking on that strong of a wrestler. I think he's obviously just going to have to really work on trying to stay upright as possible and obviously keep on developing those takedown skills. So that would be the only thing there. But for Clark, obviously, it was a hard-fought win. He was able to take heavy shots, able to take a bigger guy down, and able to get a unanimous decision victory. So big win for Devin Clark. Also, speaking of big win, Ashley Evans Smith against Beck Rawlings. Really, this whole fight, I felt that Ashley was always in control. I never really felt that Beck Rawlings was doing anything to really bother Ashley Evans Smith. And with these two kind of meeting in the middle of weight classes, so to speak, with Evan Smith being a former bantamweight and Rawlins being a former strawweight, kind of meeting in the middle here at flyweight, it would appear that you think Ashley Evans Smith would have the power advantage and obviously be the bigger girl inside the octagon. But I thought, and I think it was a little bit apparent, that Beck Rawlings maybe have a little better conditioning and maybe obviously be the faster of the two fighters. And surprisingly, though, Ashley Evans Smith, despite having a grappling background, wasn't able to really impose her will in that category. And that surprised me a little bit. Only successful on 1 of 4 takedowns, and that came very early on in this fight in the first round. That was the only round she was successful, and she didn't actually even attempt a takedown in the third round, which a little interesting. Now, in terms of throw strikes, again, talk about a conditioning thing, Ashley Evans Smith looked really good. I mean, she threw 337 strikes for a 15-minute fight at a weight class that she's never fought at before. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I was really impressed with her work rate compared to Rawlings, who only threw 196. So in terms of landed strikes, Ashley Evans Smith, despite throwing nearly 140 more strikes than her opponent, only landed, let's see here, 32 more. So Beck Rawlings was definitely being the more accurate of the two, but when you're throwing that many strikes at that many volume and you did get a takedown, I think it's really hard for the judges to kind of give you the nod. And I think that was the case here, so I don't really dispute the unanimous decision victory for Ashley Evans Smith. I thought she was the one just in complete control for this fight and very deserving of the victory there on Saturday night. All right, we got Olivier Aubin-Mercier against Evan Dunham. Definitely a shocker, in my opinion. I did not see Olivier winning because I would have thought grappling-wise, they're both pretty solid grapplers. But I would say in terms of technical jiu-jitsu, I probably would have taken Evan Dunham. But Aubin-Mercier was able to kind of catch him coming in and, just clipped him and didn't let Dunham recover. And it was a really good finish and surprising. I don't think Aubin-Mercier has had a knockout victory before. Most of his wins are either by decision or by submission. I'm going to double check that here and confirm. Let's see. At least in the UFC, I think overall in his career, I think this is his first knockout victory, I think. And definitely first in the UFC. So very impressive win for Aubin Mercedes. Definitely, I would have considered him the underdog coming into this fight. Definitely deserving of a performance of the night bonus. And yeah, that was a great performance, a really big win. Evan Dunham, I thought, was a guy definitely on a pretty good sized roll here as of late. He's kind of had a very nice resurgence, since losing 3 in a row from May of 2013 to July of 2014. He had won 4 out of his last 5 and was undefeated in his last 5. Of course, his last fight was a draw against Beneil Dariush back in October of last year. So obviously he was a guy, and beating the likes of, Ross Pearson, Joe Lazone. And like I said, even though a draw, competed very well with Beneil Dariush, who's a very good fighter in his own right. And Mercedes, even though on a nice win streak himself, wouldn't say beating quite the competition. I mean, he has a win over Tony Martin. Drew Dober, submitting Drew Dober, I think is a big deal. And then he beat Thibaut Gotti. But I think the way he won this fight, added in with the opponent, definitely very surprising to me, and a very big win for the kid from Quebec. So we're going to move on to the last prelim fight here, and that was, we got a couple of comments here. Kayla still joining us here in the comments, still trying to work out and get her on if we can. But yeah, those stats are definitely pretty wild for the Evan Smith Rawlings fight. And I mean, if she can throw 337 strikes in a 15-minute fight, down a weight class, Miles, I would definitely say she should stick at that weight class, because I don't remember her having that type of work rate at bantamweight. So I think this is just a better fit for her. And she's going to have to worry less about really dealing with girls that might be as strong as her. She's probably always going to be the strongest or pretty close to it in this division. So I think that this is a really good move for her. All right, Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Felice Herrig, the last prelim fight of the night. Ended up being a split decision, but I really think, other than the first round, I thought this was Karolina's fight. I thought she had this thing easy, 29-28, possibly 30-27. Looking at the striking numbers, not only did she outland Felice Herrig 140-97, was also the more active fighter at 262 thrown to just 228. Neither was successful in their takedown attempts. However, there was a brief ground exchange on I believe, a failed takedown by Kowalkiewicz or Herrig. There was kind of a scramble. Felice was on top, and then Karolina actually pulled a very nice sweep out, which I think was very unexpected. I think had this fight stayed in the ground, most people would have favored the jiu-jitsu skills of Felice Herrig. Obviously, I would have, and that didn't really become into the equation a whole lot. And I think Felice tried. I mean, she was 0 for 5, but by the time this got in the third round, I just think she was kind of exhausted from the pace. And anytime it did get in the clinch for her to set up takedown, which is how she likes to set up takedown, she doesn't traditionally do wrestling double legs or single legs. She was kind of getting beat up there in a little bit, and I think that was apparent. I think it's one of the reasons why she didn't try a takedown there in the third round. And even though she did outstrike Karolina in the third round, that being Felice, the more impactful strikes were coming from the woman from Poland. So I think this is a very nice victory. The interesting thing about this is, who does Karolina take on next? Because she's pretty much fought all the top girls at least once already. Has a win almost over all of them except Joanna and Claudia Gadelha. Otherwise, she's beaten all of them, including the current champion at 150 pounds, Rose Namajunas, in what was a July 2016 victory. So not even that long ago. We're talking less than 2 years ago. She beat the current champion of the world. Since then, obviously, Jody Isbell's a nice fighter, but again, probably is really a natural 105er. So, she kind of gets that tune-up fight, and gets the win there in her home country of Poland. Then obviously now takes on a, legit top 10 fighter in Felice Herrig. And to me, even though it was a split decision, I thought had won easily 2-3. And so I would say either a rematch with Joanna, possibly a matchup with Tisha Torres. I think really those are the only 2 fights I could see her realistically having in terms of the rankings, as it looks like Jessica Andrade will fight Rose Namajunas. Now, of course, if something happens, if there's some sort of injury to either Andrade or Rose, I would select Karolina to get in. But I would say Carolina probably needs one more before she gets another crack at the title. Like I said, most likely either Tisha Torres or Joanna. It really just depends whether Joanna is going to try to stay at 115 or if she makes what a lot of people thought would happen at some point in her career, a move up to 125. So we shall see how that goes and how everything plays out with that. So, yeah, Kayla commenting, just again, having difficulties getting Kayla on the broadcast here, but still commenting and chiming in, so thanks, Kayla, for sticking around. Yeah, again, like I said, probably another fight or two, and JJ wanted to fight her in Poland. I think that's still a possibility at some point of those two fighting in Poland, because I think that's a fight I really would like to have it be a 5-rounder again. While again, if it's some sort of co-main event on either pay-per-view or fight night, of course, it could be 3 rounds. But I think that fight is deserving of having 5 rounds. So, all right, getting to the main card action here at 223 as we're moving right along. It started off with a very nice performance by Chris Gruetzemacher as he was able to take out longtime veteran Joe Lazone. And really, after a really nice kind of opening 2 minutes that Lazone was able to kind of blitz Gruetzemacher, Gruetzemacher was able to take that damage. Joe started to slow down, and Gritz just kind of slowly and methodically just took over, basically coming right at him into range and just throwing shots, you know, not throwing anything particularly hard, but making sure his placement was exact, whether it was on the head, whether it was on the body, you know, whether he was clinching up, throwing knees, you know, whether he was making sure to stop the takedowns, elbows. He was definitely very much methodically breaking down Joe Lazone. I think after that first round, he knew that he was the fresher guy and he had taken the best shot from Lazone. And I think having that kind of in the back of the mind, knowing like, hey, if I just kind of stay at this pace and just kind of throw things like I'm throwing them, he seems to be wearing down. And that's going to keep me fresh just in case he gets sort of some second win or tries some crazy scramble to win by submission, which he's certainly very capable of at any point in time. So I think it was a very smart game plan, again, for a guy who needed a win, a guy who had came in this on short notice, and a guy who was looking to get a very kind of a signature victory in his career. I thought this was a very great performance, very deserving of performance of the night. And I'm really glad that this fight was stopped by the actual corner of Lazone, his coaches. I think the ref probably could have stopped it anyways, but the fact his corner had the wherewithal to just like, all right, his face is not looking good, and it doesn't seem that he's going to get a second wind. You know, this is a guy who's been around for a long time. You know, he's taken a lot of hits over there. There's really no reason for him to take any more damage than he has to, and I think that was a very smart choice by the corner. Again, I think the referee could have and probably should have stopped it, but the fact the corner was just like, nope, you know, this is all. We're going to let this go. I think you've done enough, Joe. I think was the right thing, and very nice win for Chris Gruetzemacher. And then the next fight of the evening, boy, definitely deserving of fight of the night. Zabit Magomed Shapirov against Kyle Bochniak. Originally, this was actually, I believe, supposed to be on the Fight Pass prelims, first fight of the night, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a fight where Zabit is the more talented individual. There's just no doubt about that. But Kyle Bochniak is a guy, you know, when people talk about, you know, why would you be a cage sitter? Who would do something like that? And I always say you got to be in a different mindset to be in the sport. Kyle Bochniak has that mindset. He has the mindset of being a mixed martial arts fighter, of going into a fenced-off location and hitting someone else in the face. He has that mentality. And this is a prime example of just guts, will, determination, and heart against the guy that is just bigger than you, stronger than you, faster than you, and better skilled than you. How you can compete with that. And no doubt did Zabit win. There's no doubt about that. But Bochniak just was able to take everything. He was able to still come forward. He was still trying to land a big, powerful overhand on the inside. And he just kept coming. He wasn't going to get finished. You know, he wasn't going to be beaten mentally. And if anything, I think Zabit should come out of this knowing that there are going to be guys like that in this division that are just like Kyle Bochniak, but better. And the fact that he kind of, I wouldn't say he got beat mentally, but I think he definitely got mentally, not given up, but he definitely got tired because he threw a lot at Bosniak, and most of the people he's fought in his career have not been able to take that onslaught of spin kicks and punches and strikes and, you know, the grappling, and no one's really been able to take that and coming forward. He's been able to break people down or just flat out put them away. So the fact that Bosniak was still there, third round, face bloody, coming forward, throwing bombs, I think took him by surprise. He's like, whoa, what's going on here? I've never seen this before. And I think that surprised him because his mindset may have been confident. He may have been overlooking Kyle Bosniak. But by the end of that fight, he wasn't overlooking Kyle Bosniak. And I think he learned something about himself. And I think so did Kyle Bosniak. I think he realized that if he keeps coming forward, you know, he keeps putting pressure on guys, he puts himself in a chance to win a fight. Because he finished that fight very strong. Some guys could have gone down from the onslaught. Zabit was able to just have enough to keep it going, to get the win. Two judges scoring at 30-27, 129-28. I don't disagree with any of that because I thought it was clear Zabit won the first two rounds, deserving of the victory. And if he can, I mean, heck, even if he moves at the 155, he's still a monster at like 6'2". So if he can stick around at 145, he can keep being that skinny, you know, without, you know, really hurting himself because he's definitely a very skinny guy. Then he's going to be an absolute monster and a force to be reckoned with because not only is he just tall, he's strong, he has great conditioning, he has amazing stand-up skills. You know, he's almost like a finished product. People talk about prospect. I think he's finished. Like he's really good. It's just a matter of being able, you know, maybe I guess you say a little bit on the conditioning with the output, but definitely a guy that I think is primed for a big run here. Kayla, who should Zabit face next? You know, he called out some guys there, you know, in the fight, and I think somebody like a Ricardo Lamas, some people may think that may be too soon, but, you know, a veteran like that definitely has some very serious ground skills, I think would be a nice choice, or even someone like a Dennis Bermudez, a guy who definitely pushes the pace and, you know, fights well. I think would be an interesting choice. And an outside one would be Moicano, who I'm going to get to here in a second. I think him taking on Moicano also would be an excellent bout as well. Moicano with a very nice bounce back win as we transition into the next fight, as he was able to take out Calvin Kattar, a guy who I was very high on, especially after he beat someone else who I was very high on Shane Burgos in his last fight, knocking out Burgos. And in this fight, I thought Kattar had a very good first round. Definitely was controlling the pace. You know, he stopped that early takedown. He outstruck Moicano 25-15. Was the more active fighter in terms of strike. 56. Yair, the only thing is, I don't know what Yair's doing. I mean, he hasn't fought in almost a year now since Frankie Edgar. So maybe not throwing him somebody like that just yet. Maybe, you know, you throw him someone who's also coming off a loss. You typically don't want to have someone coming off a loss, especially the way Yair lost, and haven't faced someone on a very nice win streak. So while I think that is a potential matchup in the future, I would say just for the next fight for Zabit, I would say no. I think Yair maybe against somebody like a Josh Emmett, also who recently lost, I think might be more in the mix, or even a Yair versus a Dennis Bermudez might be more in the mix than Zabit. Like I said, I think Zabit possibly taking on Moicano, or maybe even something like the Korean Zombie might be more apt just because of the wins. But we'll see. All right. Again, Moicano then figured things out. He finished out the timing. He finished out the range and started just kind of going to town on Calvin Kattar. You know, he was able to get a second win and just utilize those leg kicks. Those leg kicks were really able to keep Kattar at bay, not for the second round, but for the third round as well. And you could tell, you know, by the output, because Kattar, you know, really wasn't able to kind of match that output and successful landed strikes. I mean, he only landed, well, it said he landed 15 in the first round, but then he landed 23 combined in rounds 2 and 3 while, absorbing, let's see here, 92. So that's a big difference, 92 to 23. So the leg kicks had a lot to do with it. Calvin just didn't figure out how to check those or how to counter those. He certainly didn't. I mean, he tried 2 takedowns, once in the third, once in the first, but none of those were really that great. They didn't have a lot of conviction behind them. That's not really Calvin's game. And he just really, from that point on, was never able to readjust to that range and timing of the leg kicks. I mean, case in point, he ended up getting outstruck totally in the fight, 117 to 41. This is not going to get the job done. And so I think for Moicano coming into this fight, having lost his last fight, like I said, on a mistake to Brian Ortega, a fight where he was having success, it started to go south, he shot an ill-advised takedown, got caught in a triangle, and so for him to come back in another fight where things were starting to go south for him, at the end of the first round, things were not looking good for Renato Moicano. And he was able to make that adjustment, come through strong, and look really good. So that's why I kind of say Moicano's a beat, I think, would be a very excellent matchup as well, considering it just happens to work out that they both fought in the same card. But I think that's a fight that would be a good one. So, all right, let's see. I'm going to get to some more comments here. Hang on 1 second before we get to the co-main event of the evening. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in here on MMA World. I'm your host, Jim Graham. Kayla Beatty, my normal co-host, is having some technical difficulties. Again, it looks like Facebook signed to update or something or whatever, so we'll see. Miles commenting, Zabit versus Marco Arcani versus Jason Knight. Yeah, that definitely wouldn't be a bad matchup either, Miles, for sure. Ray's checking in. Hi, Ray. And then Miles talking about, Kayla talking about Yair's return, seeing how he fixes holes in the game. Just again, I don't know if I've really heard anything about his recovery or his timetable for return, but definitely interested, as Kayla said, to see what Yair will bring back to the table to the UFC. Now, this co-main event matchup, absolutely fantastic. Fantastic fight, very technical, very close, very sound. It's a fight that went right down to the wire, a fight where, you look at this, both fighters, I think, had their moments. When it was all said and done, Rose Namajunas, to me, I don't agree with the scoring of this fight. I don't disagree with the winner, but I disagree with the scoring. All 3 judges score this 4 rounds to 1. And I think that's a disservice to Joanna. Because when you look at this fight, she only got taken down once. That was very briefly in the 5th round. And, was kind of a late kind of seal the round type deal. It wasn't like, she got close to the submission or started, really throwing a lot of ground and pound. So that's why, that's the only time she got taken down the fight. Also add in the fact that Joanna not only threw more strikes, 372 to 304, she also outlanded Rose Namajunas 106 to 108. But to me, the striking, disparity wasn't until kind of later as this fight kind of progressed. First round pretty even, 21 for Rose, 20 for Joanna, but Rose kind of landed some power shots. Round 1 to Rose. Round 2, kind of more of the same, even though Joanna outstruck her 27 to 20. Again, power shots were favoring the original from Milwaukee and Rose Namajunas. Round 3 is, to me, when Joanna really started to kind of figure out that range. Again, much like that first matchup, and what I said entering the second one is Joanna hasn't faced someone in MMA basically the same size as her. So she's had to fight at a different range. One of the things about that range is learning how to find the jab. Jimmy Smith mentioned that during the broadcast. Joanna really likes to set up everything in her offense off the jab. But the jab wasn't there in that range, and also Rose was doing a great job not circling, but sliding, really to either slide. She was mixing things up. She wasn't telegraphing which side she was moving to. Typically, it seemed like she was moving a little to the right to throw the counter left, but I thought she was doing a great job sliding in and out both ways. But in the third round is where Joanna, I don't know if this was her or corner, made the adjustment to go, all right, the jab's not working. We can't set up our offense off the jab. We have to set it off that front leg kick. And that's when you saw Joanna, who had thrown some leg kicks. Let me see if I can bring up the specific strikes here. I don't know if they'll show it by round. Well, overall, Joanna threw 62 strikes to the leg, but believe it or not, let's see, and like I said, through 16 strikes, attempted, I should say, 16 strikes in the third round to the legs of Rose, landing 11. That wasn't the most she had landed in one round. In fact, in the fourth round, she was 14 of 14. So she was able to land every single leg kick that she threw in that round. And then was a successful 9 of 9 in round 5, 12 of 12 of round 1. So really the only time Rose kind of countered a little bit was in round 2 and round 3, where of 19 landed out of 27 attempts. So like I said, that's the round that Joanna started to work things off that leg kick. And to me, those strikes are what gave Joanna 3 and 4. Those leg strikes. Things were starting to set up. Not only was she not able to plant and deliver the power as well, you started to see Rose not being able to slide left to right like she had been in those first 2 rounds. So it was really cutting down the movement. And you could also see the way the leg kicks were catching. They weren't so much just being red, her front leg, which they were, but you saw little cuts, and that's from the toe, the point of the toe getting in there. So even if she wasn't able to get it with the shin, she was hitting the point of the toe, which definitely obviously was affecting her too. So that was a very nice adjustment for Joanna. That's something that we didn't really get to see her set up that range in the first fight because obviously the counter left hook landed. And so you could tell that Joanna just looked so much better. She looked so much fresher. It seemed like the momentum was turning her way. It was going to maybe like a Claudia Gadelha moment where she came back and won the final 3 rounds after losing the first 2. But round 5, I think Rose just kind of bit down her mouthpiece and knew, all right, this is the 5th round. If I don't change what I'm doing, I'm going to lose my championship. And the 5th round, she gritted, she was tough, and despite getting outstruck 41 to 29, really upped the output. This was the most strikes she had ever thrown in this whole entire fight. The most she had thrown up until that point was in round 1, where she threw 64 strikes. In round 5, Rose threw 73. So even in the round you would say is maybe she's her most tired, she's the most hurt, maybe mentally exhausted. She picked up the pace. And that was the biggest difference of this fight. She was picking up the pace. She started to maybe figure out that timing, knowing like, all right, she's already kind of battered my leg. Maybe if I kind of sit, wait for her to come in, try to finish with those combos, maybe I can catch her with the counters. And that's kind of what seemed to happen. She was starting to catch her with the counters, really sit down on her punches, try to get those big ones in there. And it did, because even though she got outstriked, like I said, 41 to 26, was able to land the powerful and more impactful punches. She got the leg takedown, which kind of sealed it because, the control landed a little damage. But overall, fantastic fight. It shows how much these two women are just kind of neck and neck. It really shows how much Rose has grown. I really would say since her loss to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. And as much as, she did beat Joanna the first time, I think we can see that victory was maybe a little more fluky now that the fact that they went 5 rounds, how close they were. It's just she happened to catch Joanna and, just caught her clean. And Joanna couldn't recover. I think this fight was more of the true Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and she gave it her all. She put together a great performance, but Rose was just better. She rose to the occasion, and she took that 5th round, and that's what real champions do. So if there was any doubt that she was a fluky champion or she didn't deserve it, to me, she proved it on Saturday night that she is a real champion. All right, let's get to the main event of the evening. Habib Nurmagomedov taking on Al Iaquinta. Very interesting fight. First 2 rounds, very dominant for Habib. He was able to land 5 takedowns of 9 attempts. He was actually able to outstruck Al Iaquinta 50-5 in the first 10 minutes. You did not mishear me. 50-5. That's domination. Okay? Round 3, however, in all the other previous rounds, Khabib tried at least 3. He tried 6 takedowns in the first round, so 9 in the first 10 minutes. Round 3, only tried 1. Now, I don't know if that was by design. I don't know if he was tired. I don't know if he wanted to prove a point, but only tried 1 takedown in round 3. A little surprising, in my opinion. I thought he was going to go right back to it. I think that was a tactical error. However, he did outstrike Al Iaquinta 37-7. So we're now at this point in the fight. Khabib Nurmagomedov has outstruck Al Iaquinta 87-12 through 15 minutes. Okay? I don't care what power shots, you say Al was throwing. He only landed 12 shots in 15 minutes. Not getting the job done. Okay? Round 4, Khabib again. Only tried 2 takedowns. Little surprising. Didn't really force the issue. Again, I don't know if you want to say, oh, he was trying to prove a point, he was tired, whatever. Still outstruck Iaquinta 35-15. And threw 97 strikes. Now, a lot of people are going to point to say, well, his stand-up's not that great. And it's not. But he is so much of a dominant grappler that Iaquinta cannot go full force. And you add in the 1 day's notice, the time in the video, but it's really hard to kind of throw out your whole arsenal on the guy knowing that what he did those first 2 rounds. And so I think that was a big tactical reason. And obviously, Khabib's a pretty big 155 fighter. Obviously, it's been well documented about his struggles with weight cutting. And even though not the tallest guy, is definitely carries a lot of weight and strength and size into the octagon. And maybe that was him trying to pace himself. I don't know. But there was a noticeable difference in rounds 3 and 4. And again, like I said, I don't know if that was trying to prove a point or if he was tired. Some people say, he was tired. Some people say, he was trying to prove a point. Some people say, he was just playing with Iaquinta because he knew he had him. You can say whatever reason you want. I'm just looking at what happened, and what was happening was definitely a noticeable shift. And I definitely saw a guy with holes in his game. Definitely saw a guy that was so confident in his grappling that he was just kind of walking into punches. His jab was okay. There wasn't a lot of head movement. There really wasn't great footwork there. I didn't see a guy with particularly great hand speed. And I really didn't even see a guy with particularly great power. But what I saw is a guy that was throwing, was being active, and a guy that definitely moves forward and puts pressure on you. I did see that. But I didn't see a very technical stand-up fighter. I didn't see a guy that, to me, looked like he had progressed that much in those skills over 26 fights. And his stand-up still looks like that. I mean, I don't expect his stand-up to be, well, let's just throw his Dagestani, his fellow Dagestan native in Zabit. Maybe they're not going to be that. But you would expect, even some basics to be there, some rumblings of head movement, footwork, in and out, hands up, stuff like that. But those don't seem to be there. So I don't know if it's he doesn't have those skills, he's not working on those skills, or he just feels he doesn't need those skills. I don't know, but there was definitely some holes in his game. And I think for the first time, because of the longevity, this is the longest we've ever seen him. He's never gone 25 minutes before. I think a lot of those holes, a lot of people didn't see before, or that he made up for with just always attacking the guys on the ground, were shown. So a lot of people start to believe, well, if he just stood up like that with other fighters, he could have got taken out. Very much so. But you also have to look at, maybe he wouldn't have done that against other fighters. So it can go either way. Third round, he got a takedown, was able to kind of seal the deal. Even though Iaquinta, I thought, performed admirably, he still looked fresh, relatively fresh. He didn't look like broken. He didn't look like a guy that just got mauled, a guy that didn't know what hit him. He performed admirably, on the 1 day's notice, did his best, but I think full camp, short camp, I don't think it was going to make a difference. I think the fact it was a 1 kind of day notice opponent, I think that's maybe why we saw Khabib do some of those things, maybe play around more. I think had this been the scheduled matchup, even the Max Holloway fight, I don't think he does that. I think he just keeps on going to the ground and just wipes the guy out, whoever that may be. But I think because of that, he tried to do some different things and see how they work. So it was a win. He's the lightweight champion. I guess officially Tony is stripped of the interim title. I don't know if that was ever officially announced. If it is, if someone could bring that up for me, let me know. That's fine. However, Tony, to me, for being the interim champion, regardless of how this whole situation played out with him, Khabib, and Conor, should be the next fight. It should be Tony versus Khabib, because that's what should happen. You know, Tony's won too many wins in a row, was the interim champion, whether that title was deserved, whether you thought it was rightfully stripped or wrongfully stripped, or whether it is stripped or whatever, that's kind of what has to happen. Because, you know, this whole craziness with Holloway and Tony and, you know, Al stepping up just, you know, on one day's notice and all this, you know, it needs to bring some legitimacy. Now, I wouldn't say he's a paper champion. If people want to say that, he's, you know, he's not the real champion of that. I mean, Khabib did nothing wrong in this situation. You know, he simply fought what was presented to him. It's not his fault the commission deemed Max Holloway unfit to compete. It's not his fault Tony stepped off a curb until it tore his ACL. You know, it's not his fault that, you know, not Paul Felder and Al Iaquinta and all this stuff, you know, had to happen, and that's who he ended. They had nothing to do with him. You know, he only can fight what's in front of him. And in this case, you really could only, you know, there's only so much he can do. And typically, you can hate on him a little bit in the past. He's been the guy that's typically causing injury problems. But his, you know, last two fights, he hasn't been. He's been able to show up on time, make weight, and win. So it seems like he's starting to get things figured out. So we'll see how long this injury keeps out Tony Ferguson. If it keeps him out for a, you know, a significant amount of time, then maybe we see Khabib fight somebody else. But if Tony can go, I would say, in the next 3 to 6 months, it should be Tony versus Khabib. Let's see. Let's get to a few comments here. Kayla, I love seeing these ladies work. Connor also shook Rose. We have to consider her mental game was off. Yeah, I guess you can say that a little bit, but I don't know. Come fight night, she looked mentally tough to me. Like I said, I think someone who's not all mentally there doesn't put together a fifth round like that. So I think any misgivings she had before seemed to have gone out the window, at least by Saturday night. So I don't know what was said to her before, but it seems as though she was able to recover, because obviously she did go through the fight. But yeah, I think that was a little bit of a concern. I don't think it's something that I would just sweep under the rug, though. But it seemed as though she was able to combat that and do well. Ray commenting, I think the Eagle knew not to go 100%, knowing that there's bigger fighters. Yeah, like I said, I think that he kind of saw that if he wanted to take Al down, he could. And, you know, I will say, though, Ray, I think he played around too much. You know, I don't like doing the Anderson Silva thing. To me, if you have a chance to take out your opponent, you do it. Okay? Al Iaquinta definitely has one-shot knockout power. Okay? To me, you don't toy around with that. So I don't care whether he's looking ahead of Al Iaquinta. To me, you finish what you put in front of you. You know what I mean? If he would have went in there and got a third-round finish, wouldn't you say that's more impressive than beating Al Iaquinta kind of, well, you know, he beat him over 5 rounds? You know, that's all I'm saying. You know, just take the guy out. 225 so far looks to be pretty good, Ray. Obviously, I like the addition of Holm versus Anderson. I like the fact that they're giving Megan somebody else first, considering all the, you know, talk between her and Cyborg and stuff like that. She hasn't been in the UFC, has been in the UFC and all that. So I do like the fact we're kind of giving her somebody. And plus, Cyborg has actually been pretty active. I mean, since July of last year, she's already fought 3 times and has dominated. So to me, Cyborg shouldn't be in a hurry to fight anybody. And obviously, we thought we were going to get Nunes versus Cyborg this summer. Ends up now being Raquel Pennington. So to me, that's, you know, if Nunes does get by Raquel Pennington, to me, that sets up later this year. I think that's the fight they want first. I think they want to not shelve Cyborg, but I think they want some time to really hype up a big matchup with her. And I think Nunes would be that. And or obviously, conversely, if Anderson can beat Holly Holm,
That's a big deal. And so that really kind of helps and reinvigorates the talk of Anderson versus Cyborg. So I think either way you go, I kind of like Cyborg, kind of them taking a beat on Cyborg a little bit, just kind of letting her relax and make sure that she's ready to go with someone who is perceived as a challenge to her. All right, getting a little bit to Bellator here for just a few minutes. We had Bellator 196. Overall pretty solid. It was over there in, let's see, hang on, there's the result. Okay. So we had Ed Ruth, the former Penn State wrestler, kind of meet in the middle, taking on one of the SPG guys there in Ian Pascoe. Ed Ruth was able to win, but Pascoe, I thought, performed admirably, definitely showed he's a tough guy, has some great stand-up skills, but obviously that wrestling background that Ruth possesses, and I think also moving down in weight, normally 185, probably took those shots a lot better than some other guys would have, because Pascoe definitely threw some hard shots at him. Ruth definitely took some punches, and I think while Ruth, to me, definitely deserved to win, I think you definitely saw probably keep his hands a little bit more. The weight cut, you could tell maybe wasn't quite as fresh in the third round as we had seen him in other Bellator performances, but also you can make a case this is probably the best guy he's faced so far. This was a true veteran. I think he was 17-6 or something like that coming into this fight. Obviously a significant amount more of just 4 MMA fights than Ed Ruth, so I thought that was a really good performance. Brian Moore with the very quick finish there over Giorgio Bossati, that was exciting. I thought that was a very nice submission there, had him hurt, but just kind of kept on working for it, and eventually, was able to get that guillotine. Denise Kiholtz, almost got another one of those kind of reverse scarfold judo arm bars. She does have a judo background, but for the most part, after that first round, was really just able to use her kickboxing skills. And despite Petra being a bigger and taller individual at this weight class, Kiholtz is just more technical and just faster and just better skilled. And Petra tried, but could never really catch up with the time. You could see her trying kind of wild and crazy shots, but Denise just too skilled and was able to avoid those, for the most part. And I thought that was a very nice win for her. Now 2 wins in a row, now 2-1 as a mixed martial artist, and obviously is the reigning Bellator women's kickboxing champion. But I like the way she's progressing so far as a mixed martial artist. I think the fact she has another martial art background, isn't just simply a kickboxer trying MMA. This is someone who has some ground skills, and obviously a lot of experience. So I'm really looking forward to her development as a mixed martial artist. I think so far she's been fantastic. And then the hometown kid there, Adam Borsch, take on Tidor Nikolov. Boy, this kid. Woo! Man, super exciting. The guy who was taking on Nikolov, a guy who I believe was undefeated coming into that fight. And he didn't make him look like, he made him look like a low-level fighter. I thought that was very impressive. And, I thought did so in just fantastic fashion. He was faster. He was definitely the better striker. And when it came to grappling, I don't know if, he's the better grappler, but he knew if he could stop the takedown, the fight was going to be in his realm. He made that a priority and was able to counter off it. And, once the takedowns weren't coming and you were just left getting hit, Nikolov he didn't know what to do. He had no plan B. Plan A was take him down. And once plan A didn't work, you could see him just kind of visibly, he had no idea what to do. He had no answer for Borsch. And Borsch was able to, a couple times he threw it, but this time he was able to eventually there at 1:30 of round 2 uncork that flying knee. And boy, that's a fantastic highlight. So if you missed that one, find a GIF of it or go back and watch this one. Maybe it's on demand or if you still got it in your DVR. But that was a knockout. That was a nice one. And then Ben Henderson defeating Roger Huerta. Not so much of a surprise. Not so much that he won. Not even really surprised that he submitted him. But what we saw from this fight was Ben Henderson, to me, really go out there and work for a finish, which typically you don't say those two. You don't say Ben Henderson and working for a finish in the same sentence. It just doesn't happen. He very much is a grinder. He likes to just methodically wear his opponents down, with his pace, with his control, with constantly kind of being annoying. But in this fight, you could tell he made it a point to go out there and be aggressive. You know, the old cheerleading, be aggressive. And that's when he did, okay? We need to see more of that from Ben Henderson, because some of these fights he's lost in Bellator where he hasn't looked good, he's been too passive. He's been looking to counter too much. He's looking too much for the guy to come to him or the fight to come to him. Sometimes you just need to go out there and get it, no matter who you're facing. And that was a guy he should have beat, and he did. He went out there, he went at him, and he got the job done. That's what I wanted to see from Ben Henderson. I didn't want to see, a close decision fight or, him just barely beating Roger Huerta. I wanted to see him finish Roger Huerta, and I wanted him to do so impressively, and he did. Roger Huerta, you could say, maybe had no business being in someone there. That's what I wanted to have happen, because I like Ben Henderson. And no offense to Roger Huerta, he's a nice guy. He's had, he's had a pretty successful career. I mean, maybe he never reached the top, but he's definitely had success in the sport, but you can just tell that it's just not. I think that drive's not there for him, and I think those losses in Bellator and towards the end of his UFC career, I just think mentally he could just never recover. And I think he beat a lot of guys in Asia and stuff just because he was simply more skilled. But I think now, 34, nearly 40 fights in, I think it's a time to look at him, maybe either just straight up coaching, maybe a career change. I know he's done some acting in the past. I don't know if that's still an avenue for him, but it just doesn't look like he's competing with the top guys anymore. Bellator gave him a chance to come back to see, what still was left in the tank. And you make a case, well, Ben Henderson probably even beats him in his prime. Maybe so, but in his prime, I don't think Roger Huerta goes out like that. I think that's fair. All right, we got Bellator Kickboxing 9. Very nice kickboxing fights if you end up watching them. We saw the beast that is Jorina Bars continue to stay undefeated with actually a rare knockout. She typically wins by decision. I think only has like a 30% knockout rate, but boy, definitely blitzing Athena Evmorfati. I said that correctly. I'm going to be honest. I don't think that girl should have been in the ring with Miss Bars. That to me was just a complete mismatch and kind of not surprising. I mean, this woman's she's a monster. 44-0 with 3 ties, a win over Cyborg. She's a monster. Okay, I mean, I don't know where you have to go to find her talent, but or competitive bouts. I don't know if you got to bring in some of your mixed martial art fighters to compete with her, but she's pound for pound probably the best female kickboxer in the world. I don't think there's a doubt about it. People can talk about Metzka from Glory or, your Tiffany Van Soest or Emil Debbie's and stuff, but, I mean, Jorina Bar is probably for me. Then John Wayne Parr, to me, I think he got robbed. I think he should have got his 100th victory. I thought Lopez only really won the 3rd round, in my opinion. I think that's where you saw, John Wayne Parr starting to slow down. Eder Lopez, I think, was definitely the bigger and stronger guy, but Parr, even though the older, more experienced guy, was definitely faster, definitely the more technical of the two. I think showed that in the first 2 rounds. 3rd round, maybe started to slow down a bit, but I thought he won this one. You could tell he was shocked. I think this was a bad decision by the judges, but that's what happens sometimes when you don't knock him out. I'm not saying Parr should have knocked him out. I think he had a very good strategy, throwing a lot of kicks to the legs and body, really frustrating Lopez, but it is what it is. Let's see, we had Sengol versus Rakosi. She got the win. Pretty apparent. 2 old school, heavyweight guys, going back to K1 days. Alexei Ignashov defeated Javish Porchniak, if I said that correctly. And then Raymond Daniels, once again, just putting on a show, throwing spin kicks from odd angles. How you got to beat Raymond Daniels, you really got to try to use footwork and movement and forward pressure to really try to back him into corners, back him in places where he can't throw those spinning kicks, where he can't get space. You really got to almost kind of turn it into a boxing match rather than a kickboxing or point karate match. And really at no point in time was the Frenchman close to being able to do that to Raymond. So no surprise, Raymond Daniels walking away with the victory and his first successful title defense of the welterweight kickboxing championship. So, All right. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Graham. Thanks to everybody for joining me here on Beyond the Cage here on MMA World. Again, we're having some technical difficulties, so I'm just with my co-host. So I'm just flying solo this week. We'll try to get Kayla back on next week. Real quickly, Bellator 197 is this weekend on Paramount TV. 4 fights for the main card. Originally was supposed to be Michael Chandler trying to recapture, I believe it would be for a third time, the Bellator lightweight championship. However, Brett Primus got hurt, so now it's Michael Chandler against Brandon Gertz in the main event. This is going to be kind of a hometown showcase for Michael Chandler fighting there in St. Charles, Missouri. Also, a very exciting co-main event as you have AJ McKee versus Justin Lawrence at 145 pounds. Super stoked for that. We're also going to get Baby Slice, who looked really good in his second Bellator outing, getting the win by submission. So Kevin Ferguson Jr., a.k.a. Baby Slice, will be taking on Devin Brock. And then also Logan Storley versus Joaquin Butley. I don't know as much about those two gentlemen, but we'll see what they bring to the table. But for a little 4-fight, Friday night card from St. Charles, Missouri, I think pretty solid for Bellator 197. Obviously, it sucks we couldn't see the title fight because obviously I hope I'm not just speaking for myself. I think we all want to see how that Chandler-Primus fight goes without that weird kind of somewhat fluky foot-leg injury that Chandler suffered in the Bellator pay-per-view that they battled up against last summer. So it looks like we'll have to wait a few more months until that happens. So in the meantime, Brandon Gertz is obviously a very game opponent. We know he's a game opponent. Obviously a guy that stepped up to take on a much bigger and stronger man than him and Fernando Gonzalez, a guy that's had an absolute trilogy wars with Derek Campos. Guy that's not, went toe-to-toe and, had an exciting fight with Melvin Gillard. So, Brandon Gertz is definitely going to bring it. Michael Chandler's a guy that's always bring it, so it should be action-packed. I would favor Michael Chandler, but, Brandon Gertz is a guy that you can't sleep on. He definitely has power and definitely a guy that is a tough guy and definitely is always in every fight that he's in. All right, let's get to UFC Glendale, which is coming up this weekend from Glendale, Arizona. Speaking of kind of hometown showcases, that'll be the showcase here for Justin Gaethje. He's originally from Arizona, so he'll be the hometown guy taking on Dustin Poirier in the main event in what will be a UFC on Fox here on April 14th, again from Glendale, Arizona. The main card kicking off at 8 in the East, 5 local time there in Arizona, or for the majority of the West Coast. Really looking forward to this fight. Boy, so many fights are on this card. There's actually, if I do my math correctly, there's 14 fights for UFC Glendale. So I think it's been a while since the UFC's been to Arizona or New Mexico or like San Diego-ish area. So if you're near Glendale, I'd get tickets to this one if tickets are still available. If you haven't already, I mean, you're definitely going to get your money worth in fight. I mean, you're going to be there a while, so be prepared to get comfortable in those seats. There at the, is it the jobbing.com arena? It's not saying the arena name here on the UFC website, but I think it at one point was jobbing.com. Maybe it changed. But I think it's where the Phoenix, are they now the Arizona Coyotes? Where the Coyotes hockey team, the professional hockey team where they play. But 6 fights on the early prelims. Super excited. A guy who's world-class Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist, Gilbert Burns. One of the best in the world, and when he does jiu-jitsu grappling, he's taken a guy I've actually interviewed before back in his RFA days turned LFA days. Dan Murray, the Hitman, he'll be making his debut. He's had a really good run in Legacy and RFA promotions, posting up a 13-3 record. Normally he fights slower, but obviously a chance to fight in the UFC on short notice. So he'll definitely have his work cut out for him, against the very accomplished jiu-jitsu black belt in Gilbert Burns. So that is the highlighted prelim, but that to me, that's the one I'm really most looking forward to. We're also going to see, Luke Saunders against Patrick Williams. I really like Luke Saunders. Matthew Lopez against Alejandro Perez also. Then we're going to get Arjan Singh Bilar against Adam Wozniak, if I said that correctly, in the heavyweight division. Yushin Okami, boy, trying to fight at welterweight. He's going to take on Diego Lima in the welterweight division, and then a women's flyweight match. Sheena Dobson against Lauren Mueller. That will take place here on the Fight Pass prelims as well. Heading over to the prelims early on Fox. Very nice matchup here in the middleweight division. Christoph Jacko against Brad Tavares. I think Brad Tavares has looked pretty good of late. Jacko, of course, had that bad fight with David Branch, and then he got knocked out by Uriah Hall. So Jacko, after having a great win over Talis Leites, I think it's been less than a year, maybe almost a year ago, has had some tough times, but Brad Tavares is a guy that he's also struggled a little bit against Leach. So I think that's a very interesting bout. I think both guys need a win to kind of prove they determine they are a top 15 fighter in the middleweight division. So I think that's a big fight for both guys. Wilson Hayes against John Moraga in the flyweight division should be interesting. Of course, both have gotten to a title shot, have both got demolished by Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Moraga's kind of been hit or miss of late, but we'll see how he goes against Wilson Hayes, who is a very good grappler. Does have some power, but not the best standing up. So we'll see how that goes. I would say Moraga's probably the better stand-up fighter. Ricky Rainey, also, he's a good fighter. He's coming out of Titan FC, I think he's coming out of. 13-3 welterweight, very highly praised kind of prospect, making his debut against Musam Sulklov, also known as the King of Kung Fu, coming out of Russia. So that I'm interested to see Ricky Rainey. I've heard his name kind of whispered throughout the years that this guy's legit and that he's deserving of a call up to the UFC, and we'll see how he looks. I'm interested. And plus, he's taking a guy named the King of Kung Fu. How can I not be intrigued by that? And then it ends with a bout here in the middleweight division as Tim Boesch will take on Antonio Carlos Jr. Very interesting bout. You have, very much a classic kind of American wrestler against a very skilled Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I very much see this fight taking place on the ground. Standing, I don't know. I would say Boesch is the more powerful of the two. We've seen him get more knockouts in his career. In fact, Antonio Carlos Jr. has 0 knockouts in his 13-fight career, to where over half of Boesch's wins are by knockout. So I think that's a big deal, is that the longer this stays standing, Antonio Carlos Jr. to me is putting himself in danger. But if it turns into a grappling match, we've seen Tim Boesch get submitted by guys before in both weight classes, 205 or 185. So I think this should be definitely a battle if this thing goes to the ground, because it will be the wrestling of Boesch or the jiu-jitsu of Antonio Carlos Jr. All right, let's get to the main card here real quickly for the breakdown. Kicking off in the strawweight division, Michelle Waterson against Courtney Casey. Courtney Casey, though living and doing most of her training out in Hawaii, is actually originally from Arizona. So she'll be kind of more of the hometown girl, even though Waterson's not that far from Arizona, there over in Albuquerque, where she has lived and trained for quite a long time. Coming into this fight, Waterson, of course, 14-6 overall. Has been some tough luck as of late. After debuting in the UFC in 2015, being the likes of Angela Magana and then submitting Paige Van Zandt. She's ran into the now current champion, Rose Namajunas, getting submitted in the second round and losing her most recent fight December of last year right here in my hometown of Detroit to Tisha Torres. Obviously, 2 top 5 fighters, with one of those being the champion. So no shame losing to those 2 individuals. But definitely one of the themes in those fights was Waterson maybe giving up, obviously, a little size. That's one thing she had to give up to kind of fight in the UFC, being a former 105-pound champion with the Invicta organization, a champion where she had a really nice run. But in the last fight, definitely was giving up some size and strength to Tisha Torres. And in this fight, Courtney Casey's definitely once again going to be able to be the bigger girl. Courtney Casey is one of the biggest girls in this weight class, listed at 5'7", with a reach of 67 inches. Whereas Waterson checks in at just 5'3", with a reach of 62. And the biggest difference will be, can Casey use that size to her advantage? Can she impose her will? Because Waterson, I would say, is probably a little more skilled, probably is going to be a little faster, a little more technical with the stand-up, and probably overall, probably the more technical jiu-jitsu practitioner. But Courtney Casey is the girl that definitely does not back down. She's very much likes to move forward. She likes to be in your face. She likes to create scrambles. She's good in scrambles. She really likes to put it on you. She really likes to make you work for those situations. And I think if Courtney Casey can do those things intelligently and just not going too fast and too reckless, whereas I think someone skilled as an experienced as Michelle Waterson can take advantage, then I think she can win. But if she goes in, does it right, moves forward, make sure she's not, overdoing things, not make sure she's tiring her out, make sure she can kind of let Waterson feel the weight, feel the power of the punches, then she can get the job done. Despite losing her last fight to Felice Herrig, I would say Courtney Casey has been performing really well, in my opinion, since coming into the UFC on short notice, against Joanne Calderwood. That's dating back to July of 2015. And then she had the close fights, and then she had the close fight and lost to, Sohee Ham. But again, back-to-back fight of the night performances. Then she put together two incredible performances, knocking out Stan Shue, as well as Randa Marcos, finishing both of those individuals. And then, even though she lost, performed, I thought, in a loss very well against the, one of the best in the world in Claudia Gadelha. Then comes back and has a huge upset win over Jessica Aguilar. And then, like I said, has that close, very, very narrow loss to, Felice Herrig. So even though she's 1-2 in her last three, she's been competitive in all those bouts. And to me, really since that first UFC victory in July of 2016, I think has, to me, deserving of a top in the top 15, and is definitely a girl on any given night that compete with some of these top girls in this division. So Michelle Waterson definitely has to look out, and definitely to me, a lot of the pressure's on Michelle Waterson. She's the bigger name. She's a former champion, albeit in a different weight class and different organization. She's been in main events before. She's the karate hottie, probably has a little more fan base. To me, she's lost 2 in a row. Courtney Casey loses, I don't think she gets cut, but no one, people go, well, she lost. But if Michelle Waterson loses 3 in a row, people start to say, does she have to move back to 105? Is she done? Does she not have it anymore? And so this is a really big fight for Michelle Waterson. And so I wonder if that will cause any sort of pressing, or maybe Michelle Waterson do something uncharacteristically that may get her in trouble because of that. All right, next fight of the evening here for UFC Glendale will be in the middleweight division, as Israel Adesanya will take on the Italian Marvin Vettori. This should be outstanding. Of course, Israel Adesanya being a former kickboxer, a guy who I think had 50 or 60 wins or something, a guy who was one of the best glory kickboxers in the middleweight division. At the same time was also doing MMA kind of on the side, but eventually he had an opportunity to, fight for the UFC, and so far has looked nothing short of fantastic. The man known as the Style Bender, boy, just had an absolute heck of a performance in his debut, knocking out Rob Wilkinson, but obviously knowing that Wilkinson was going to try to take him down at every step of the way, and was able to, for the most part, work out of those situations, kept throwing, kept coming. He's just supremely skilled, and obviously if he can keep sprawl and brawl, good luck trying to stand up with this guy. Good luck. He has a ridiculous reach. He has an 80-inch reach. I believe he's 6'2". Great kicks, great punches, knows how to use his range well, knows how to keep out of damage, and if he can add in stopping, getting taken down, it's going to be tough to deal with that stand-up. But he's taking on a young man who I really am a fan of. Definitely a guy that goes for it. Definitely a guy that is very much a forward-first fighter, a guy that's not afraid to get in the brawl, a guy that's not afraid to go in there and mix it up with everybody. And that's the Italian Marvin Vettori so far. 2-1 in the UFC with a draw. Had a draw in his last fight against Omari Akhmedov. But I think every fight that he's been in has been entertaining. And I think in this fight, to me, is really, can he get on the inside? Can he take those damages to get inside? Can he tie Adesanya up, make him carry the weight? Because I would say Vettori's maybe a little bit stronger. At least kind of just on stature. Maybe we'll find out on Saturday, but I think he needs to get inside, and I think he needs to damage Adonijay in the clinch. I really think that's where he needs to bid up. I wouldn't really worry so much about getting the takedown and being in top. If he sees it there, great, but I wouldn't try to overdo it for it. I'd very much try to keep him in close and really just try to frustrate Adonijay. And, throwing big bombs I know is part of his game, being reckless, but I would say just a little pitter-patter in the first round. Clinch him up, pitter-patter, just annoying kind of little shots. Stuff that maybe gets Adonijay to maybe kind of break out of his shell as far as doing something reckless, to make him not as cool and calm and reserved as he was in his debut, to really try to throw him off his game. And then maybe you can start throwing the big bombs. But, we'll see. Or maybe he'll just come forward and say, hit me with your best shot. I'm going to try to hit you too. I mean, that's entertaining. Maybe not be the best game plan, but we could see that from Victoria as well. So I'm excited. Definitely got a very much contrast in styles, and it should be entertaining. And, I'm looking forward to it. Then we got Carlos Condit versus Alex Oliveira in the co-main event of the evening. Carlos Condit definitely looked a little bit rusty in his last fight against Neil Magny. We never saw the output from Carlos Condit that we're accustomed to for a natural-born killer fight. And Neil Magny, very much a guy I would say is a grinder, guy who definitely is a more workman-like type fighter, kind of took advantage of this and was able to exceed the output and really was never in danger from Carlos Condit. And I think Carlos, coming off the layoff, coming off an injury, I wouldn't say gun shy, but definitely looked like a guy that hadn't fought in over a year. Definitely looked very much like a guy that was, trying to kind of feel and ease his way back in. Unlike Neil Magny, where a fight where you could do that and maybe kind of get away with not really getting damaged, but you get out with a loss. You can't do that against Alex Oliveira. Alex Oliveira is very much a guy who will put it on you. He's very much a big welterweight. Despite being a former 55er, he's long, he's lanky, he has power, good submission skills, and definitely a guy that can, take a beating. He can give out a beating. I mean, if you look at his last fight and what I dubbed the fight of the year against Yancy Medeiros, and even though he's coming off a loss as well, he's going to test Carlos Condit. It's going to need a vintage Carlos Condit natural-born killer type performance to get a victory. Because if the Carlos Condit that showed up against Neil Magny is there on Saturday, I think he's going to get knocked out. You don't say that. Carlos Condit is not a guy that gets finished. He's never been finished. So I think maybe once very early on in his career, but he doesn't get finished. So while as shock as that may be for some people to say that, I think Alex Oliveira could finish Carlos Condit. But let me be clear, though. Carlos Condit, if he shows up like he did against Neil Magny, will get finished. He needs to up that output. He needs to be, sticking and moving and just, throw those shots, throw those leg kicks, and just overwhelm Alex Oliveira with volume. If he can do that, maybe we'll see the return of the natural-born killer. But when we see a guy kind of slowly kind of plodding, trying to, well, he does cut angles, but throw a lot of feints and, ease himself into this fight, he's going to get knocked out. No doubt in my mind. All right. This is a main event right here. I don't care. Pay-per-view, not pay-per-view. This is a fight. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. Both guys are just absolutely fantastic. Dustin Poirier has, had some hiccups since his move to, 155 pounds, but for the most part, it's been a noticeable improvement for him, starting, with the win over Diego Ferreira, and then he knocks out Yancy Medeiros, really just kind of batters Joe Duffy, and then knocks out Bobby Green. And like I said, has a little hiccup there with, Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson is definitely the guy that has power. He got caught. He had the no contest there after the illegal shot with Eddie Alvarez, but that's coupled with a, dominant, beating of Jim Miller. And, despite not being able to fight Eddie Alvarez, he took on a former champion in Anthony Pettis and beat the brakes off of him. You can talk rib injury or not, but Dustin Poirier was putting the brakes to Anthony Pettis. There ain't no doubt about that. Now, of course, Gaethje's coming off a fight with the aforementioned Eddie Alvarez, a fight that was absolutely crazy, a fight where, he was landing, but again, Justin Gaethje is the guy that, he takes as well as he gives, and for a guy that was undefeated, all these finishes had never been finished, eventually found the strike that did it, and that was a huge knee from Eddie Alvarez, the first time Gaethje has ever lost, let alone been finished in a fight. And, he's obviously taken some time off. I guess for him, 4 months is time off. I would always consider him a pretty active fighter. And he's going to be in for another type of fight. The biggest difference I see in this fight is, whether or not Gaethje will really press the issue with the takedowns. I think that Gaethje is the better wrestler. I know, I don't know if he's a black belt, but maybe he's a brown belt, or he's pretty close to his black belt, Dustin Poirier in jiu-jitsu. But I would still favor Justin Gaethje in a grappling match. Gaethje's also been 5 rounds before. Poirier, I think, let me look here. I think it may have been 5 rounds once. Let's see. Well, he was scheduled for 5 rounds, but then got submitted against the Korean Zombie in May of 2012. And then, let's see, UFC, his fight against Cub Swanson, I guess, wasn't a main event. Okay, I thought his fight against Cub Swanson in February 2013 was a main event, but I guess it wasn't. He lost that fight. So, yeah, he's never been 5 rounds before. So that's something Gaethje, obviously, in his former organization, World Series of Fighting, has done. So that could be somewhat of an X factor, the fact that Gaethje knows how to go that amount of time and still keep up an incredible pace of not only dishing out damage but throwing it. So look for that to be an X factor. But really, I think it's just going to be who kind of blinks first, quote unquote. I think both guys are very capable of finishing the fight, knockout or submission. Both guys throw caution to the wind. Both guys very much like to bang, do violence, and this should just be a fantastic main event. And I got to do picks here for this one. Boy, I got to do picks real quick. I'm running a little long on time, but boy, I got to do picks for this. Oh, but it should be absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I think the X factor, maybe a little bit of conditioning for Gaethje, maybe a little bit of the wrestling. But I would say striking, Poirier is a little more technical. That also could be the difference as far as, sitting down on punches. Gaethje is very much, open, more looping shots because he knows he has great wrestling to defend him if someone tries to take him down. So I think that could be a big difference too, is maybe Poirier a little more technical, a little more of a traditional kind of stand-up boxing, whereas Justin Gaethje is very much more of a brawler type style. All right, let's get to the 4 fights here for UFC Glendale coming up this Saturday on Fox, 8 in the East, 5 in the West, and I think that would be 1 a.m. for the fans out there in the UK. So, in the strawweight division, Michelle Waterson versus Courtney Casey. I like both women. I've interviewed both women. I think they're extremely talented, but going to go with Courtney Casey in this one to pull the upset. I think right now, as of late, she's been performing better, so I'm going to go with Courtney Casey to get the win in her home state and pull the upset there in Glendale. Israel Adesanya, as he will take on Martin Vettori. Like both guys, but I got to go with Israel Adesanya. I think Vettori, while a tough guy, likes to come forward, can definitely take shots. I don't think he has enough grappling skills to be able to hold Adesanya down long enough to keep the very talented kickboxing skills of Adesanya out of the picture. So I'm going to go with the style bender to win this one. Carlos Condit against Alex Oliveira. I'm a big Carlos Condit fan. I always have been. But his last performance definitely left me something to be desired. And I'm not sure if the old Carlos Condit will come back again. I hope so, because when he's on, he's one of the best in the world. So I'm going to take Alex Oliveira. I think this is on short notice with the upset. I just feel that, Carlos Condit, maybe he's lost a little bit. I hope not, but maybe he'll prove me wrong, and I hope he does. But I think Alex Oliveira, right now, despite losing that fight of the year to Yancy Medeiros, is definitely a guy that can finish anybody in this division. So I'm going to go with Alex Oliveira in this one. Main event of the evening, Dustin Poirier against Justin Gaethje. Oh, this is so tough. I'm going to go with Justin Gaethje. I like the 5-round experience, hometown. I like the wrestling ability. One while Poirier, I would say, is definitely the more technical stand-up, we could see him probably easily catch Justin Gaethje. Gaethje's a tough guy, despite getting knocked by Alvarez. You know, he's taken a lot of punishment in previous matches and hasn't gone down. So I don't think that's like a blemish or anything. Or now all of a sudden, you know, Justin Gaethje can't take a punch. But it's definitely going to be a fun fight. Great main event. Glad that this was able to happen. And you know, the winner definitely puts himself somewhere in this crazy division, either for a title shot or, you know, very close to it. So I'm going to go with Justin Gaethje to win this one. All right, again, Kayla Bailey wasn't able to join me, but again, check out her stuff, her latest articles, pictures, thoughts on Fangirl MMA, at Fangirl MMA on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, as well as on Instagram at the Jim Graham. Thanks, everybody that tuned in. Thanks, Miles, for helping out with the comments, and everyone else that tuned in this week here on MMA World and MMA UK. Again, facebook.com/Mixed Martial Arts UK and facebook.com/MMA World with 2 extra Ds at the end. So thanks, everybody, for watching. I'm your host, Jim Graham. Until next week, thanks for watching another edition of Beyond the Cage. Goodbye, everybody.